This dramatized story is inspired by real legal principles and public cases. It is presented for educational and entertainment purposes, with all interpretations attributed to their respective sources. The courtroom was silent. Only the faint buzz of fluorescent lights filled the air. At the plaintiff's table sat a frail, soft-spoken grandmother from Albuquerque. At the defense table, a billion-dollar corporation in tailored suits and stainless smiles. On the bench, the judge read the verdict. A number, so large it hung in the air like static. 3 jurors blinked, unsure if they'd heard correctly. McDonald's found liable. Damages, $2.86 million. The reporters froze. Pens hovered. Cameras clicked. 1,000 headlines were born that instant, and most of them would get the story completely wrong. Somewhere between truth and television, one of the most misunderstood lawsuits in history had just made landfall. Because this wasn't about coffee, it was about how far a company would go to protect its image, and how much truth the public would trade for a punchline. This was the day a jury told the world that even giants could bleed, and the day the world laughed instead of listening. This is the billion-dollar verdict no one saw coming. It began in a parking lot outside a McDonald's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The year was 1992. Stella Liebeck was 79 years old, retired, widowed, gentle in manner and patient in spirit. That morning, her grandson Chris drove her to get breakfast after a grocery run. They ordered a 49-cent coffee through the drive-thru window. No one in that car could have guessed that this ordinary act would soon become a courtroom legend, mocked, twisted, and weaponized by corporations for decades to come. They parked. She tried to add cream and sugar. The lid slipped. A cup of coffee spilled between her knees. The coffee wasn't just hot, it was near boiling, 185 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cause third-degree burns in seconds. She screamed once, then silence. Her grandson rushed to help, pulling the cup away, but the damage was done. In the ER, doctors counted burns over 16% of her body. She would spend 8 days in the hospital and 2 years recovering. When her family asked McDonald's for help with medical bills, $20,000, the company offered $800. They expected her to disappear. But Stella Liebeck was not a punchline. She was a person. And soon, her story would become the mirror in which America saw what corporate power really looked like. Stella never wanted to sue. She wanted fairness. But when the corporation refused to acknowledge fault, her family turned to a local attorney, Reed Morgan, a quiet, meticulous man known for taking impossible cases. When he looked at the evidence, one number caught his eye: 700. That's how many prior burn complaints McDonald's had received over a 10-year period. Customers, children, employees, all scalded by coffee, kept 30 to 40 degrees hotter than what other restaurants served. Internal memos showed company executives knew it and still decided to keep the temperature high. Optimum flavor profile, one report said. But there was another reason: corporate convenience. Hotter coffee lasted longer on the shelf. Reed stared at those memos and whispered to himself, "They're saving pennies and burning people." He filed the lawsuit, Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants. The initial reaction was ridicule. Late-night comedians mocked it. Talk radio hosts turned Stella into a symbol of greed. "Woman sues over spilled coffee," they joked. No one mentioned the skin grafts, the hospital bills, the ignored warnings. The media loved the headline. They never checked the facts. And somewhere inside McDonald's corporate offices, someone must have smiled, because the world was laughing in the wrong direction. Courtroom 219, Bernalillo County Courthouse, August 1994. The air conditioner rattled against desert heat. At one table sat a grandmother in a beige sweater. At the other, 5 lawyers in dark suits and corporate calm. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Proceed with opening statements." Reed Morgan stood first. His voice was steady, measured. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, "this case is about a company that chose profits over people. It's about warnings ignored and safety sacrificed." He paused, then pointed to a photograph of Stella's injuries, blurred for the jury's dignity. "She isn't asking for sympathy," he continued. "She's asking for accountability." The defense countered with precision. "Your Honor," their lead attorney said, "this is an unfortunate accident. Nothing more. Everyone knows coffee is hot, but that was the trick. Hot wasn't the problem. Unreasonably hot was." Experts testified that McDonald's coffee was served between 180 and 190 degrees Fahrenheit, far above the industry average. At that temperature, human skin suffers third-degree burns in less than 3 seconds. Then came the bombshell. A McDonald's quality control manager admitted under oath that the company knew the risk and had no plans to change policy. 700 injuries, Reed said, holding up the documents. "And you called them insignificant." The jury fell silent. The judge leaned back, pen motionless. The corporation had underestimated its opponent. Because while their lawyers spoke in metrics and margins, Stella's attorney spoke in something rarer, human terms. Imagine sitting in that jury box. The evidence in your hand says everything, and yet the world outside already decided the joke. During cross-examination, Reed asked a simple question. How many people have to be burned before McDonald's changes its policy? The witness hesitated. There isn't a number. That moment changed everything. Jurors later said it was the instant they stopped seeing a spill and started seeing systemic indifference. One juror, a retired engineer, whispered to another, "They're treating burns like business expenses." Reed's closing argument hit the same note. "This isn't about coffee," he said. "It's about dignity. About how much pain a corporation can ignore before someone says enough." The defense stayed cold, methodical. They argued personal responsibility. They called it an isolated event. They told the jury Stella had caused her own suffering. But when the evidence was laid bare, the memos, the testimonies, the photos, the question wasn't whether the coffee was hot. It was whether McDonald's still had a conscience. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. McDonald's executives stared straight ahead, expressionless. The foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, McDonald's restaurants, liable for negligence." He continued reading. Compensatory damages, $200,000, reduced to $160,000 for partial fault. Punitive damages, $2.7 million. That number wasn't random. It represented 2 days' worth of McDonald's coffee revenue, the price of indifference. The room erupted. Some gasped, others clapped. The defense froze in disbelief. Stella lowered her head and wept, not out of triumph but relief that finally someone had listened. Outside, reporters scrambled to broadcast the story, but not the truth. Within hours, headlines distorted the case into comedy. Grandma wins millions for spilling coffee. Talk shows mocked her. Politicians used her name as a punchline in speeches about frivolous lawsuits. McDonald's PR machine worked overtime, feeding selective facts to media outlets. And the lie stuck. The judge later reduced the punitive damages to $480,000, and both sides settled quietly out of court. But by then, the damage to public perception was irreversible. America remembered the verdict, not the evidence. Years later, law professors would call it the most misunderstood case in modern history. McDonald's quietly lowered its coffee temperature by 20 degrees. Safety manuals were rewritten, but the media never issued corrections. For decades, politicians cited the hot coffee lawsuit to push tort reform, making it harder for victims to sue corporations. They used Stella Liebeck's name to protect billion-dollar companies from accountability. Reed Morgan retired from law a few years later. He once told a journalist, "We won the case." But we lost the narrative Stella lived quietly until her passing in 2004. She never sought fame, only fairness. In her final interview, she said softly, "All I wanted was for them to make it safe." She never drank coffee again. The verdict itself wasn't $1 billion, but the impact was. It changed how corporations view risk, how the public perceives victims, and how truth can be reshaped by repetition. Inside boardrooms, it became a cautionary tale, not about safety, but about public relations. Inside law schools, it became a study in how easily justice can be mocked into meaninglessness. The irony was perfect. The woman they called greedy had exposed greed itself. The case they mocked for being small revealed something colossal: the price of apathy. Today, if you walk into a McDonald's, your coffee will be around 165 degrees. Hot, but not dangerous. No plaque marks the change. No ad campaign thanks the woman who made it happen. But quietly, through every safer cup served since, her victory lingers. Maybe the real burn wasn't from the coffee, but from how quickly the truth cooled in our hands. Because that's how justice often works. Not in fireworks, but in the silent adjustments the world makes afterward. In the end, the billion-dollar verdict. No one saw coming wasn't about a cup of coffee. It was about what happens when truth cools too quickly. And people stop asking why. This was the dark verdict, where every case whispers one truth, even justice has a shadow.